So let's start in the usual way, adjusting our motivation, thinking that the purpose of our life is to benefit all sentient beings. And in particular, in order to benefit sentient beings in the best way, we ourselves must first achieve the state of enlightenment. Then and only then will we have all the skills, qualities to guide sentient beings most effectively from the oceans of samsaric suffering to the state of enlightenment. And therefore, we are going to engage in this Dharma teaching. Okay. So one of the other lights just went off, so we got this one. It's pretty nice though, I think. It's okay, lighting? All right. I also have a bit of a cold. Okay. So what I thought we could do, here we can just do in the brief way, no commentary this time. Taking refuge in generating bodhicitta. This formulation before we take the teachings, right? I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly by my merits of listening to the Dharma. May I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly by my merits of listening to the Dharma. May I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly by my merits of listening to the Dharma. May I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. So, okay, so what I wanted to do, okay, we're going to go into some of the actual past life stories of the Buddha, I promise. But some of you will know, right? So this is, I have here sharing with you the Lama Chupa Jocho practice, so the Guru Puja practice. And there is this kind of standard text written by the first Pension Lama, Losang Chugi Gyaltsen. And there's these added prayers and practices that have been added, from the lineage lamas through the oral instructions, and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, following the tradition of his own masters, added certain prayers and practices while we do the Lama Chopa Jorcho practice. Yeah. And so, now Shanti, who's not here this morning, but she just went to the Light of the Path. And those of you who have done a retreat sort of in the tradition stemming from Lama Zopa Rinpoche's instructions, then you'll know that the first session of the day is usually devoted to this Lama Chopa Jorcho practice with all these sort of additional practices. So within that, there is this one here. Okay, so this is where it comes in the text. Is there's this root text verse Cherishing myself is the doorway to all loss, while cherishing my mothers is the foundation of all qualities. Hence, I seek your blessings to make my heart practice the yoga of exchanging myself for others. So now at this point in the text, you see, Lama Rinpoche had advised that we sort of embellish this verse with further sort of thought transformation practices, right? So we had said in other contexts that this thought transformation or lojong, although in general, all of the various teachings of the Buddha in one way or another are about transforming our thoughts, transforming our mind. In the Mahayana context, the main thought transformation that we have to do is, exchanging myself for others means to exchange our current state of just cherishing ourselves, only thinking about ourselves, being very selfish, with cherishing others, thinking about others, putting others at the forefront. Okay. So there are three lojong prayers that we alternate. And this 8 verses of thoughts transformation, you guys know. Then there's this one, the thought transformation prayer of the Buddha's previous lives, right? And this is from the Chö practice. So, yeah, a little bit, I don't know, coincidentally or serendipitously, however you want to look at it, there have been a series of Chö teachings here at Sera. And yesterday was the Long Life Puja. So we just went through 7 days of that. So Chö means to cut. And really what needs to be cut is the self-grasping mind and the self-cherishing mind. So yeah, without getting into it too much, the Chö practice, one of the main parts of it is you will imagine, right, giving your own body away to sentient beings. Okay, so just as we saw in the previous life story of the Buddha when he gave away his body from the tigress, then we sort of train our mind in that, right, as a means to give up the self-cherishing mind, because of all of the the things we possess. Well, our body and our life, those are sort of most precious to us, right? So in this practice of Chö, then this prayer sort of recounts some of the previous life stories of Buddha, where, as we'll see in just a moment, all the sort of sacrifices that the Buddha made in his past life, of his body, of his possessions, of his flesh, in order to benefit sentient beings. Okay, so I thought this would be a little bit introduction. We can see its application in other parts of our practice, and then we'll dive into a few of the actual life stories, previous life stories of Buddha. Okay. So when teacher Buddha Bhagavan was Prince liberating all on the path of the courageous ones, he gave away his son, daughter, and his kingdom. In the same way, may I be able to renounce without any sense of loss my family, friends, and possessions, which are so dear to me. When he was king, great courage, he fed the tigress with his own flesh. In the same way, may I be able to joyfully give this cherished illusory body to the host of Pishaka. Pishacha. Okay, so this is the story that we saw in the Sutra of Golden Light. It's also the first chapter in Arya Sura's Jataka Malas. Jataka Mala. So yeah, when he was Prince Might of Love, he fed the yakshas with his own blood. In the same way, am I able to give with compassion the warm blood of my heart, so difficult to cut, to the blood drinkers. Let me zoom in. So this is the story I mentioned in a few different contexts, but this is the point. Remember the first five disciples of Buddha in Varanasi, Sarnath, yeah. Those first five disciples of the Buddha, I brought it up in the context of the imprints that we have, that we gain in studying and listening to Dharma teachings. They will then make it easier for us to gain realization in the future. When we're talking about the importance of the oral transmission or receiving these lungs. So these five yakshas, which are like kind of cannibalistic spirits, in this previous life of the Buddha, he fed those spirits with his blood because the cannibals were killing beings in his land. Then, due to the cause of setting up that karmic link, later they became his first five disciples when he attained enlightenment. And it is said that even during that first turning of the wheel, the first teaching, then they all became Arya beings. And some became arhats. Others, reached the path of seeing and the path of meditation. So, yeah. Then, when he was young water carrier, the son of a merchant, he liberated fish by reciting the Tathagata's holy name. In the same way, may I be able to practice giving the holy Dharma to the infinite beings destitute of Dharma. So this is the other story that we saw from the Golden Light Sutra, right? He liberated fish by reciting Tathagata's holy name. So now, do you remember that name?
Suktorchana, mention Suktorchana.
Yes. And Tathagata is Deshin Shekpa. So this is also a little bit nice to know. So some of you know the 35 Buddha practice, right? And so in actual text, okay, it's also known as the Sutra of the Three Heaps. Sutra of the Three Heaps. And just, we're not going to get into it all, but those three heaps is the heap of prostrating, the heap of confessing, and the heap of rejoicing. So you see that sutra, in the beginning, it's the confession, or sorry, it's the prostration to all the Buddhas, the 35 Buddhas, and then you confess, and then you rejoice. So yeah. In the actual text, okay, now as we do it, so let me try to find it. You'll see, let's see. Okay, you'll see here, right? So the Guru, teacher, Bhagavan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate. Now, in the original text, it doesn't have this to Tathagata. Okay. Actually, we mentioned in another context that, when Lama Tsongkhapa was, training, then at one point he left during the middle of a teaching he was giving and went with eight disciples to retreat. And for the first 4 years, they engaged in these preliminary practices, right? During that time, by the way, we have the 35 Confession Buddhas. And so normally, we talked about this in the last module for the Discovering Buddhism. With the preliminary practices, normally people do 100,000 of each. But Lama Tsongkhapa, he did 100,000 prostrations to each of the 35 Buddhas, not just 100,000 prostrations. Okay. Now, if you look in the prayer books of the other Tibetan schools, you'll just see to thoroughly destroying with Vajra essence. Okay. Not this Tathagata. So as Lama Tsongkhapa was doing the prostrations, he was doing it like that, according to the tradition and to the original text. But it is said he had a vision of the Buddhas, but they were missing their heads. They're missing their heads. So he sort of had this thought, oh, you know what? It's actually a little bit not nice just to say the name without this epithet. You guys know epithet? Okay. Epithet, this title, Tathagata, right? So from his side, he thought, oh, you know what? It's more respectful if I, address them. Tathagata thoroughly destroying the Vajra essence, not just thoroughly destroying the Vajra essence, right? So this is very important. It says in the Lamrim, we should address, of course, the Buddhas, but even our teachers, very respectfully. And so there's another story, actually from Kejubje, who, the main disciple of the Buddha, of Lama Tsongkhapa. So at one point, when Kejubje went to go meet Lama Tsongkhapa, he went to the retreat place where Lama Tsongkhapa was staying, the hermitage, and there was kind of a gompa kind of lower down, and then there was some retreat places built on the side of the mountain. So he went down and he met a nun, and he asked the nun, where's Losang Drakpa? Okay, so Losang Drakpa is the ordination name of Lama Tsongkhapa. So the nun at that time, I think, was washing dishes or something. And so was just asked this question, oh, where's Losang Drakpa? So the nun stops washing the dishes, goes back into her house, her hut. She must have been staying lower. Like puts on her robes, lights a stick of incense, and says, if you're referring, to the great master, kind in three ways, Lama, Losang Drakpa, Pel Zangpo. Pel Zangpo is another thing we'll see at the end of people's names. Pel is glorious. Zangpo is, Badra in Tibetan, in Sanskrit, means good. Like, so it's like the glorious noble one, or like glorious good one, right? So if you're referring to, the great, kind in three ways, right? Kind in giving, so there's different contexts, but we can say in the Tantra context, kind in giving initiations, kind in giving the vows, and kind in giving the commentaries. Okay. Losang Drakpa Pel Zangpo, right? If you're referring to that great master, he stays in the hermitage up there. Okay. So, yeah. I didn't mention, it's good to mention, but there's one of our Dharma brothers, been a long-time student, actually first of Lama Yeshe and then of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And I remember about a year ago, there were these teachings that were actually arranged here at a nearby monastery, and Lama Zopa Rinpoche was the main sponsor. As I mentioned, he was always emphasizing the need and the benefits of these oral transmissions, and would sponsor the oral transmissions of various teachings that were in danger of being lost. So he was here. Lama Zopa Rinpoche was here. He had sponsored these rare teachings, these very precious teachings. And this student came. And so there was a relatively new monk here at Sera. I'm not going to mention who it is. But this new monk was just saying like, oh, Lama Zopa this, Lama Zopa that. And at one point, okay, when this monk wasn't here, or wasn't with us, this other student said to me, hey, Namjong, you got to talk to so-and-so. He's just referring to, Lama Zopa Rinpoche as Lama Zopa, Lama Zopa. You should always say Rinpoche. You should always say Rinpoche. So I told other people this. I didn't tell him this at that time, but that impressed me. Just how he handled the whole situation. So he didn't mention to him, the other monk who was just referring to Lama Zopa, but to preserve harmony, but came and mentioned it to me and asked me to talk to him. So first of all, the respect to the guru and wanting to be referring to him as Lama Zopa Rinpoche or Rinpoche, giving a more sort of high and respectful way of addressing was very good. And then not to confront that other person directly, but to do it in a kind of way that would preserve harmony. And that was very good. So anyway, later I told him that I was impressed, but at that time I was just like, oh yes, okay, I'll talk to him. Okay, so Lama Tsongkhapa, when he was doing these prostrations to the 35 Buddhas, had a vision of the Buddhas, but they were missing their heads. So he thought, oh, it's not good just to refer, to them with their name, right? Thoroughly destroying Vajra essence, but we should add this Tathagata. So then he started saying, Deshin Shekpa, he added this Tathagata. And then he got the full vision of the Buddhas with their heads and everything. So that is now how we, have come to add the Tathagata in this prayer. But still to this day, you look at, other prayer books from, Kagyu or Nyingma, they have this same practice of the 35 Buddhas, but they have still the original text. Okay. So where were we? Oh, yes. So Deshin Shekpa, Rinchen Sukter Chan. Okay. When he was a prince, great meaningful virtue, he was able to bear in gratitude with compassion. In the same way, may I cherish with great compassion those around me who disturb me with their ungratefulness and bad dispositions. So, This is very important one, right? As we had mentioned in other contexts, remember Shariputra, one of the great disciples of Buddha. So we mentioned, he's the example of someone who, although they had achieved bodhicitta, and Shariputra before had been a bodhisattva, but when he was on just a new bodhisattva, someone asked him for his hand, and he cut off his hand, thinking, maybe he had read similar prayers to this, like, oh yeah, I hear the Buddha, the bodhisattvas, they're giving away their body, their lives. Now is my time to do that. And so he gave, he chopped off his hand, gave it to the other person, but he chopped off his right hand and gave it to the other person with his left hand, which, as you know, in Asia, in India, is very disrespectful to give someone with your left hand. So the person to whom he gave his hand then got very upset and said, "How dare you pass me something with your left hand?" and didn't accept it. So then Shariputra in his past life got very, like, oh my gosh, how am I going to be able to benefit sentient beings, right? So then fell away from the bodhisattva path. Said, I'll never be able to benefit sentient beings if they're going to be this ungrateful. Therefore, I'm just going to attain, personal nirvana for myself. So this one, right? Cherishing and bearing in gratitude is going to be very key for us to traverse the whole bodhisattva path, right? Forget about traversing the whole path. Even for us to enter the path is going to be important, you know. When he was the bodhisattva monkey, he rescued the evil man from the well. In the same way, may I benefit evil beings without discouragement and compassionately guide them without expecting favors in return. Alas, there is no one who has not been my mother and father, nor is there a moment of happiness in the realms of samsara. Therefore, may I be able to lead all my mothers, including the gods and demons who appear and exist from the realms of samsara. Okay. And then, okay. This prayer as well, to become like Buddha in his past lives. So it's just two more pages. So let's do that. We'll get an overview and then we'll go in more detail. So when you were born as Maitra's daughter, you took upon your mind stream the suffering of all transmigratory beings. Likewise, may all sentient beings suffering without exception ripen upon my self-cherishing. So this is, referring to that practice of Tonglen, giving and taking, where we, in the realm of imagination at first, visualize breathing in, taking on sentient beings suffering, and we think that that's ripening on our self-cherishing. Okay. When you are born in the vast depths of hell, you generate the mind that cuts off the door to rebirth in the lower realms. Likewise, may all negative karma and sufferings of transmigratory beings without exception ripen on me, and then may the lower realms become empty. Just like in your life story as the rishi expressing patience, even though others say unpleasant words to me and strike me with weapons, may I especially come to benefit them with compassion, just like a mother whose beloved son has died. Okay. So this story is very, very famous one. Do you remember seeing this in another place? Okay.
The story of the woman or the first one?
The rishi expressing patience.
I don't remember that one.
So here is the Vajrakara Sutra. Okay. So anyway, further Subhuti, that which is patience, the patience gone beyond of the Tathagata has not gone beyond. Why is that? Subhuti, because when the king of Kalinga cut off my limbs and appendages, there at that time there did not arise in me discrimination as a self, discrimination as a sentient being, discrimination as a living being, nor discrimination as a person. And in me there is no discrimination whatsoever, yet there is also no non-discrimination. Why is that, Subhuti? Because if at that time there had arisen in me discrimination as a self, at that time there would also have arisen discrimination of malice. If there had arisen discrimination as a sentient being, discrimination as a living being, discrimination as a person, at that time there would have arisen discrimination of malice. Subhuti, I know with clairvoyance, in that past period during 500 lifetimes, I was the rishi called preacher of patience. Even then, there did not arise in me discrimination as a self. There did not arise the discrimination as a sentient being, discrimination as a living being, discrimination as a person. So, we see that? So, this is Vajrakara Sutra. Now, we're going in a few directions, but we're not going to go into the ultimate quite yet, okay? But just so you know, remember, this Vajrakara Sutra is a sutra on emptiness. Therefore, it's talking about things in the ultimate level, not just the conventional. So one thing just to know, right? When we say discrimination as a self, you know, in other contexts, right? Subhuti says, I am the foremost of the arhats who are in wisdom. I'm the, yeah. But I do not think of myself as the foremost of arhats in terms of wisdom. If I did think of myself as the foremost of arhats, I would not be an arhat, something along those lines, right? So it's actually not the case that that Subhuti doesn't think of himself as being an arhat, right? Subhuti knows he's an arhat. He knows he's the foremost in wisdom, right? But when we say discrimination as a sentient being, means thinking of himself as a inherently existent arhat, as an inherently existent preacher of patience, inherently existent like this, right? Right? That's what you should know. Otherwise, it's very strange, right? Because of course, the arhat, they will know they're an arhat. They will know that they would have abandoned all the afflictions, right? So anyway, we have to keep in mind, especially when we read these Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, when is it talking about conventional reality? When is it talking about ultimate reality? As the Bodhisattva Chandra, you subdue the multitudes of wicked rakshas with the holy Dharma. Likewise, may I be able to subdue by myself alone all foolish, evil, transmigratory beings without exception. As a prince meritorious power, you satisfied countless transmigratory beings with the flesh of your body. Likewise, may my body in every possible way becomes a means of living for all transmigratory beings. As a great being, you transform yourself into the chief of turtles and save the merchants from the ocean. Likewise, may I become a bridge freeing all transmigratory beings without exception from the great ocean of cyclic existence. When you were born, by the way, yeah, this story is also referred to in Lamrim, I think in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. I think these merchants, their ship was sinking and they didn't have a lifeboat. So the Bodhisattva transformed his body into a huge turtle that all of these merchants could then use as a like a lifeboat. But if I remember correctly, I think due to the weight of all the merchants on his back, he himself, drowned. Like the story of the turtle coming up every 100 years. Well, the turtle still has to breathe, right? So they do have to come up every so often. But I think these merchants will kind of weight him down. Anyway, when you were born as a chief of rabbits, you skillfully ripened the countless transmigratory beings. Likewise, may all who see, hear, remember, and touch me without exception be placed on the ripening and liberated paths. So, very, very good aspiration to have. Especially, some of you have done the blessing of the speech. And after blessing of the speech, there's the two other mantras that Rinpoche has added. I think one is I have it in this prayer book. The mantra taught by Gyalwa Gendin Che, I think. Let's see. Yeah. Gyalwa Che, Joden Gyalwa Che. And then this one, the exalted stainless beam, totally pure light mantra. All right. So here's some more advertising. So the benefit of reciting this mantra, then the 10 non-virtues and 5 heavy negative karmas without break of anyone who hears the voice of a person who has recited this mantra are purified. Just by hearing the voice of a person who has recited their mantra, being touched by their shadow or by touching that person's body purifies negative karma collected in past lives. Okay. So normally what I do and what I also recommend people to do is you recite this mantra, do this, blessing the speech practice, right? And then recite this mantra and then dedicate in a way very similar to this, may any being who even merely sees, hears, remembers, touches, or talks to me never again be reborn in the lower realms. May they instantly be freed from all their sufferings of body and mind and quickly attain the state of enlightenment. So just something like that. What do you think? Rinpoche, when he talked about this practice, then was saying, especially those, if you're on TV, if you're seeing a lot of people, my camera's out of focus, right? Then to recite that mantra. Anyway. Okay. As ocean atoms, you made 500 prayers to liberate the transmigratory beings who in degenerate times lack a savior. Just as you did, likewise may I too fully complete all prayers without exception. So this also comes up in Lamrim, right? How Shakyamuni Buddha was kinder than all the Buddhas to us. Okay. Because the other bodhisattvas, they saw how degenerate sinning beings would be in this time, and so they they thought, oh, I don't want to. That'll be too hard. I don't want to appear as a Buddha in that time. But Shakyamuni Buddha in his past life, he said, yeah, I will. May I be born in that degenerate times and benefit the sentient beings who are very unruly. As the wheel-turning king, realm of spokes, in order to accomplish the supreme field of Sukhavati, you perform 3 conducts for completing, ripening, and purifying. Likewise, may I too bring those conducts to completion. May I too train in the conduct of the powerful sons of the victorious ones, Savior Maitreya and Hero Manjushri, Samata Bhadra, Akashagarba, and so forth. Okay. So like that. Now, in these prayers, we saw the story of the Bodhisattva monkey. Okay. And we also saw the story of the Rishi perfecting patience. So when I was preparing for this session, I mentioned that I found a borrowable version of the text on the internet, on how do you say, archive.com. And so I wanted to go through some of these. Now I got excited when I saw, but I'll have to say, unfortunately, although there are 2 volumes, only one is available for borrowing. And that's volume 2. Nonetheless, it's better than nothing. So can you see this? Okay. So this is the story of the preacher of forbearance. Okay. So let's see. I want to make this bigger. Okay. Can you see this? So how this text is. Yeah, hold on just a second. Oops. Okay, one second. I have to. I want to make this bigger, but here we go. Okay, so here we go. A little bit better. I'm not sure how to get rid of this at the top, but let's be content with this. Okay. So this is the story from the Jataka Tales about when the Buddha was the preacher of forbearance. Okay. So number 28. Remember in Arya Suta's text, how many are there? 34. So this is also important to know. Badly pronounced Sanskrit, but like Shanti with it like k at the beginning. So that's Zupa. Okay. Zupa. like Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So the third perfection. Vadin is like preacher of. Okay. So here we'll do in a similar way. I'll read, and when something sort of moves me, I'll add a bit of a commentary. So nothing is unbearable for those who have internalized forbearance and are great in equanimity. Tradition has handed down the following story. The Bodhisattva is said to have once become an ascetic after he realized that the household life offered meager opportunities for virtue because it is thronged with vice. After being afflicted by numerous faults and calamities, the household life was devoid of tranquility due to its emphasis on profit and desire. It was a meeting place for wicked taints such as passion, hatred, delusion, intolerance, violence, infatuation, pride, and selfishness. Destroying a person's sense of shame and morality, it was an arena for greed and evil. He saw the renunciate life, on the other hand, as providing a happiness that was removed from these vices, since it shunned possessions and desires. So it was that he became an ascetic, his mind thoroughly intent on virtue, learning, tranquility, and discipline. So I know you're all lay people there. So, yeah, in general, lay, ordained, young, old, man, woman, we all have to do our best with the practice. But, and for sure, becoming ordained, it also depends on one's individual karma. I think we, said in other contexts that even, many who came to Rinpoche and asked to be ordained, Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, no, sorry, you don't have the karma. Okay. Nonetheless, you can see here, right? The other side of it is then, especially in this day and age, you'll see people sort of criticize and say, "Oh, what are those monks doing? They're not contributing to society." I mean, not you, but in general, this is sort of what was said by the communist regime in China. That they were just, not productive members of society. Okay. But you can see here, right, the sort of overall and a big picture, and why one would become ordained is, theoretically at least, right, due to sort of renouncing the worldly life, and its emphasis on profit, right? So instead of thinking about how to make money, how am I going to support myself, and then in doing that, right? If we're engaging in business, sometimes it's like a zero-sum game, right? The more we want to profit, then we're going to want to charge higher prices, and then our customers, they're going to have to pay more, and this whole relentless pursuit, it's it's problematic. It's problematic. At the very least, even if we're engaged in sort of right livelihood, then I like to say it like this, right? Instead of doing a 9 to 5 normal to make money, then theoretically, as an ordained person, you should be using all that time that's been freed up for your study and practice, right? So now, whether you do that or not is another story, but I at least wanted you to see, why it is sort of emphasized in the traditional text. Yeah. So He never deviated from his vow of forbearance, and since he always praised forbearance and preached the teaching with regard to that virtue, people ignored his personal and family name and created their own name for him, calling him Kshanti Vadin. Okay. So, yeah, it's a nice nickname they gave him. A wealth of power, knowledge, or asceticism, or wide range of passion for the arts, or abnormalities of body, speech, or behavior can all produce new names for people, right? So we sometimes, see this. Sometimes like a really big person, they get the nickname Tiny, right? But otherwise, yeah, people get nicknames for all sorts of reasons. Knowing the power of the virtue of forbearance, keen to adorn the world with it, as he did himself, he repeatedly preached on forbearance and thus acquired the name Kshanti Vadin. The vast endurance innate to his nature, unalterably strong, even if others harmed him, combined with his fine discourses on the topic, gave him the widespread renown of a sage. Okay. So since he was always emphasizing the practice of forbearance or patience, he got that nickname. So, by the way, just as to draw a similarity and maybe tell you something, maybe some of you know, maybe some of you don't. The Buddha Maitreya, okay? Maitreya got that name in a similar way. Maitreya, loving kindness. So he was always emphasizing the practice of loving kindness. And so actually, while he still was a bodhisattva, he got the name Maitreya. And then from that life, throughout the rest of his past lives, and then even after he appears as a Buddha in this world, he will always be known as Maitreya. Okay. Mm. Yeah. So it's not always that, right? For example, Shakyamuni Buddha, we see in the previous life stories, he had different names, when he was the prince water giver, when he was the rishi, uh, preacher of patience. He had different names throughout his different lives. The Great One lived in a region of the forest that was delightfully isolated. Bearing the lovely beauty of a garden, the forest effortlessly produced flowers and fruits in every season, and its spotless pools of water were adorned by lotuses and lilies. Through his residence there, the Bodhisattva furnished the area with an auspicious nature of an ascetic grove. For wherever saints dwell, adorned by virtuous qualities, the place becomes auspicious and attractive, a sacred site or ascetic grove. So this is also important to draw this connection. Remember in the Lamrim, when it talks about the attainment of shamatha or gaining a calm abiding mind, it talks about the kind of place where one should dwell. And in the list of good qualities of the place, it says that one should try to do retreat in a place where a previous holy being has lived. Okay. So through the power of that saint or that great practitioner, then the place itself becomes auspicious and attractive, right? We see also, in the Vajrakara Sutra, it says even the place where the Vajrakara Sutra is taught will become like a stupa, right? And then in the Abhisamaya Alamkara, it talks about the various kind of benefits and good qualities that the bodhisattvas obtain on each of the 10 grounds. And it says, I think on the 6th ground, on the 6th ground, then the place where the bodhisattva resides becomes a stupa. So stupa, next Tibetan lesson for you, in Tibetan, ch ten, ch ten, ch. Where do we see that? So, okay, the ch practice, cutting, it's like ch, like a little bit higher pitched, but ch with a little bit harsher ch, ch. That's lama chupa, offering. Okay, so ch ten means basis for offering. Now they call a stupa that, right? Because it's a basis of the mind of the Buddha. It's a physical representation of the mind of the Buddha. And then when we circumambulate or make offerings toward it, then, actually the circumambulation is like an offering. It's like offering a prostration, right? So in any case, for sixth ground bodhisattvas, then it is said wherever they reside, then becomes an object of offering, even that place. So here at Seda, we're very fortunate. I don't know if you follow, but His Holiness the Dalai Lama is going to come to Seda for a month, or going to come to South India for a month, in about a month. And the monastery is, very busily making, preparations for that in the Lachi. So there's Sera J, Sera Me, and Sera Lachi. Lachi is the combined Sera J and Sera Me. They're building a sort of ramp up. Before they just have stairs. And so now they're building a ramp because His Holiness is taking the aspect of having trouble walking upstairs. And they've already, years ago installed elevators and so forth. So they're trying to make the building sort of more accessible for His Holiness. In general, at all the monasteries, in the kind of main hall, on the top of it, they have a residence of His Holiness. And when people come to do pilgrimage, even if His Holiness isn't there, they want to go see His Holiness room. It's like a place for pilgrimage. And I know at Drepung, it's very interesting. So, okay, in many Asian cultures, you don't wear shoes inside. So then, within His Holiness room, there's his bathroom, and because the floor can get wet in the bathroom, then sometimes they have these like shower slippers. Okay, so I was with someone, a nun, I'll say, and we go for pilgrimage to see His Holiness room, and like there's some part like there's a kind of rope or barrier, so you can't enter so much. It's kind of like a museum, right? They have it. You can kind of see the room, but you can't go on the bed or anything. And there's security. But when we go in, then the nun notices there's the shower slippers of His Holiness outside the bathroom, and says to the security guard, "Oh, can you just touch those?" Can you touch those slippers to my head? Can you touch those slippers to my head? And the security guy is like, "Oh." But then it took like taken aback for a second, but then it was like, "Oh, okay. So for the blessing, you see, for the blessing." So then, security guard took the slippers and put His Holiness like shower slippers on her head. And I was like, wow, that's actually a good idea. So I also got that blessing. But yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. In any case, you'll see the place, the seat where His Holiness is sat, the stairs leading up to the teaching throne. All of these, the Tibetans, they'll place their head like out of respect. Okay. So, in any case, honored by various special deities who live there, and visited by lovers of virtue who sought bliss, he paid the greatest favor to the crowd by giving religious instructions on the topic of forbearance, which gladdened their ears and hearts. One day, the king of the region conceived an urge to play water games, a desire made stronger by the intensity of the hot season. He therefore traveled with his wives to that forest area, which possessed fine qualities of a garden. Okay. So this is another person. So in many of the Buddha's past life stories, he is a king, but he's not a king in this life. He's the ascetic, right? He gives up the worldly life because he recognizes the faults of it. Okay. But the king of that region wants to play in the water. And so he goes to that same place where the rishi propounding patience is residing. Okay. In that forest, charming as Nandana, the king wandered about around pleasurably as if the adorning area was his luxurious play, his beautiful wives scattered around. Among the arbors inhabited by creepers, among trees with their laughing flowers, and the waters with their expanding lotuses, he delighted in the women's natural excesses. Okay. The women's graceful reactions of fear at bees aroused by the combined scent of garland, liquor, ointments, and oils made the king smile as he gazed upon them. Okay. I'm not going to give commentary here. So just as the women were unsated by flowers, although blossoms of pure beauty covered their ears and garlands of their hair, so the king was never satiated by their coquetry. The king watched as the women's eyes themselves, like garlands of flowers, hovered like bees over blossoming trees, clinging to arbors, tearing over lotus clusters. Even the cries of cuckoos, bold with lust, dances of peacocks, and songs of bees could not outshine the chattering, dancing, and singing of the women. So basically, okay, the king, it's a hot summer day. He has his sort of, we could say, harem, or all his wives. They go and they're frolicking in the forest pools, and the king is sort of watching all the women frolic about, and is very overtaken with lust and these feelings. Okay. When the drums boomed like thunderclouds, the peacocks shrieked and spread their fans like actors using their fine skills to perform service for a king. After he had enjoyed to his heart content the pleasures of his women company in that garden-like grove, the king felt exhausted by this indulgent play, and like a drunken drowsiness enveloped him, making him fall asleep on a fine and costly couch in a beautiful bower. When the women saw that the king was occupied with other things, they spread out in various directions, forming groups according to their liking. Drawn by the beauties of the forest, they were still unsated, Okay, so unsated means, not content, right? Unsated by its sights, right? Wanting more. The hum of their chatter mixed with the discordant jangling of their ornaments, followed by a parasol, yak tails, throne, and other marks of sovereignty carried by the maids, and gleaming with golden streaks, the women wandered in natural wantonness. Wantonness, it's like desire, right? So we get these academic translations here. No, it's actually good. This actually, by the way, is very excellent translation. You see, on the left here, is the Sanskrit, right, of Aryasura's text, and on the right, the translation. So it's very easy. It'd be very good if one were learning Sanskrit, then one could sort of, compare with the original, and that's a very good way to learn, right? Ignoring the maid's attempts to stop them, greedily they grab hold of every pretty flower or lovely sprig they could grasp from the trees. Okay. Though covered in wreaths and flowered ornaments, the greedy women left unplundered no shrub with pretty blossoms, nor tree with quivering buds that they encountered along the way. So here it's actually quite nice. You see, the maids, they're okay. So these women, they are so kind of greedy, right? And they see these flowers, but they're not just happy leaving the flowers there on the trees, on the shrubs, but they want to possess the flowers themselves. So they're picking all the flowers and like making garlands for themselves, putting them in their hair, and so forth. But the maids are like, hey, don't do that. So maybe the maids are just like, now, yeah, kind of maybe some of the first environmentalists on record. As the royal women wandered through the forest, their hearts smitten by the loveliness of the groves, they came across the hermitage of Shantivadan. Those in charge of the women did not try to restrain them, even though they knew the sage's ascetic power and illustrious nature. For the king was fond of his women, and the women were hard to stand up to. So this, yeah, okay. The women therefore entered the hermitage as if drawn by the splendor of the sight, made all the more beautiful by the ascetic spiritual accomplishment. There they saw the eminent ascetic sitting cross-legged at the foot of a tree, auspicious and pure to observe. He was like the personification of virtue. Although he looked serene and benevolent, his profound nature also made him intimidating, for he seemed almost to blaze with the splendor of his ascetic power. Though his practice of meditation meant he focused on lofty objects and concentration, still he glowed beautifully with the serenity of his untroubled senses. The mere sight of the ascetic made the women feel overcome by his radiant power. Discarding their frivolous, wanton, and overbearing conduct, they approached the ascetic with polite modesty and sat before him respectfully. So this is also, it was mentioned in one of the previous life stories of the Buddha, where, even when one is subdued, that has an effect on others that come into contact. So these women, they're so overcome with lust and desire, frolicking about in the forest, just picking all the flowers, destroying the kind of natural beauty of the place. But when they come across the hermitage, and when they come across this rishi propounding forbearance, propounding patience, they're immediately subdued, and they're when they came down and sat before him. Similar, by the way, remember those 5 first disciples of Buddha. Remember, they had been training with the Buddha, and they're all practicing asceticism, not eating. And then, when the Buddha collapses, and then it gets the kir, or the kind of rice pudding from the girl, yeah, then the 5 disciples sort of lost faith and they wanted to ostracize the Buddha. Then later, when they come up to him, they didn't want to speak to him at first, but then when they approached, they saw the Buddha's radiance, and then they're humbled and then sat in his presence. The ascetic greeted the women with friendly words of welcome, showing them proper courtesies that delight guests. This is very important too, okay? Okay, so sorry, I'll say. Taking advantage of the opportunity offered by their questions and by way of a hospitality gift, he then preached a sermon using discourses filled with examples and containing topics that women find easy to grasp. Okay, so remember, in the 4 ways of subduing disciples, right? You guys know this? There's the 6 perfections and the 4 ways of subduing disciples. Okay, the first one is, speaking kind words. Second is to draw people in through your generosity. Okay, so of course, our words have so much power, and before someone is going to be open to receiving advice from you, right? They're going to want to have a nice feeling. That's why I know in certain companies, right, they have this thing before the bosses give feedback that you always say something good that the person has done. And generally, 2 good things or more. And then you say something they can work on, right? Did you guys do this in your companies? Have you heard this? So yeah, it's true. And maybe, maybe that the management guru who thought of this had read Lam Rim. Anyway. So first, being very friendly with them, giving gifts, okay? Then, right, by way of hospitality gift, so then maybe giving them something to eat or drink. You see this also in the Sangata Sutra, where the Bodhisattva Mengide Baisha Jasena, then there's a group of beings that come and say, oh, hey, first have some food and drinks, and then I'll teach you Dharma. Okay. Those who have a blameless human birth have no disabilities. Their senses sound, and have no disabilities, their senses sound, but who never do good, despite death's necessity, are neglectful daily. Are they not deceived? Okay. So here, it's so wonderful. Okay. Once you have that, that firm basis, remember, of the Lam Rim, and especially those Lam Rim outlines. Remember I talked about we hang our ornaments on the tree. Okay. Then we see blameless human birth, have no disabilities, their senses sound. That's referring to the precious human rebirth, right? Precious human rebirth, which gives us the perfect ability to practice virtue, to make progress along the path to enlightenment. Okay. Now, but who never do good despite death's necessity, are neglectful daily, are they not deceived? So here it's almost like a little teaching on the whole small scope of Lam Rim, right? Despite death's necessity, right? So remembering impermanence and death, that's the one that should spur us on to practice virtue. Okay. Are they not deceived? Now, this, by the way, this stanza is, very much like a stanza from Bodhisattva Charyavatara, right? Saying there can be no greater folly and no greater deception than one who, after having achieved a precious human rebirth, do not accomplish virtue, right? Though they may have noble birth, looks, youth, great strength, or swelling wealth, no one enjoys happiness in their next life unless adorned by giving morality and the like. Here again, right? Only thing that will matter at the time of death is our virtue, right? Though lacking qualities such as a noble rebirth, if one spurns evil and has giving morality and the like, one is flooded by happiness in the next life, just as the sea is flooded by rivers in summer. Even those with noble birth, good looks, youth, great strength, or swelling wealth, a regard for virtue is an ornament in the world, whereas gold garlands merely indicate wealth. Okay. So here, we have this ornament in the world. So this is very common in the literature, right? We have those very, very famous texts by Maitreya, composed in Sanskrit, the ornament of Mahayana Sutras and the ornament of clear realization. So then in the commentary by Asanga, talking about the various ornaments, right? So there's the external ornaments like flowers and so forth, but the real ornament is the regard for virtue, meaning wanting to engage in acts of virtue, wanting to shun non-virtue. That's the real thing that makes one beautiful. Trees arising from earth are adorned with flowers. Clouds bulging with rain are adorned by lightning. Lakes are adorned by lotuses by lotuses with drunken bees. But humans are adorned by special virtues. Humans have low, medium, and high levels of health, lifespan, wealth, looks, and birth. These three types do not derive from character or external causes. They derive from karma. Knowing this as the fixed nature of the world, and that life is changeable and bent on decay, renounce evil deeds and rely on pure behavior. For this path will bring glory and happiness. A corrupt mind is like a fire, incinerating the welfare of oneself and others. Those who fear evil should diligently avoid it by following the reverse. Just as a fire, however, it blazes, quenches on meeting a mighty river brimming its banks, so mental flames quench in one of forbearance, bringing him benefit in this world and the next. Through forbearance, one shuns evil by destroying its cause. Through devotion to kindness, one never generates hatred. Loved and honored, one enjoys happiness. By practicing purity, one finally reaches heaven as if it were home. Furthermore, good ladies, this quality of forbearance excellently perfects a pure character. The development of merit and fame, it is pure without having contact with water, and its many virtues make it full of riches. A delightful fortitude in the virtuous, it never takes note of the attacks of others. Its virtue gives it the fair name of patience. Shrewd and compassionate, it acts to benefit the world. An ornament in the powerful, the peak accomplished in strength. The peak of accomplished strength in ascetics, a torrent of rain on the flaming fires of violence. It calms all evils in this life and after death. Worn by the virtuous, the armor of forbearance blunts the abusive arrows shot by wicked men. Turning into flowers of praise, they become a garland of glory. They describe it as the joy of liberation, saying it destroys the delusion of impeding virtue. Who would not strive for forbearance when it always brings welfare? Such was a sermon that the Great One offered as a hospitality gift. Okay, so here, we see the skillful means of the Bodhisattva, seeing these, quote unquote, noble women, who are in the king's retinue, the king's wives and so forth. And, they were just destroyed all the shrubs and picked all the flowers to make these garlands, right? Make these ornaments for themselves. So now the Bodhisattva saying, hey, you know what? A little bit hinting, but in a nice way, saying, the real ornament, the real thing that's going to make you virtuous, make you beautiful, is is virtue, right? And that is the ornament of the wise ones. That is really, going to create benefit for you in this life and the next, right? Whereas, even all these flowers, yeah, you pick a flower and then it might look good, might smell good, but in a few days it withers and dies, right? Yeah. So the king had meanwhile woken up, his weariness dispelled by sleep, though his eyes were still heavy with lingering drunkenness. Eager for lovemaking and furrowing his brow, he asked where his female couch attendants. He asked his female couch attendants where his queens had gone. When the maids informed him that the queens were adorning other parts of the forest, gazing at its beauty, the king rose from his couch, eager to see his queens' brazen lack of constraint, their laughter and chatter, and their playful behavior. Accompanied by eunuchs from his harem, who wore corsets and bore sticks made of reed, the king wandered into the forest, while young women carried his parasol, yak-tails, fan, cloak, and sword. The royal ladies had formed a path made of clusters of flowers and piles of sprigs that they had strewn in their abandon, sprinkled with the dye of Beetlejuice. So the king followed this track until he reached the hermitage. Okay, so yeah, you guys get it. So remember, these ladies, as they're going through the forest, they're picking things, and just kind of made a mess. So then the king could follow their trail, as it were. Now it happened that the king possessed a wicked and deep-seated enmity toward the bodhisattva that derived from past lives. This, combined with the fact that he was overcome by jealousy and his composure was unsteadied by drunkenness, meant that as soon as he saw the eminent ascetic, Kshantivadin, surrounded by the troop of queens, he became filled with utter rage. Lacking all strength of reason and dropping all politeness, courtesy, or decency, he became overwhelmed by the evil of rage, making him sweat, change color, and quiver. His brow furrowed, his eyes squinted, rolled, glared, and turned red. All his good looks and charm had disappeared as he ground his gold-ringed hands together, his golden bracelets jangling. Insulting the eminent ascetic, he then said the following words. Ha! Okay, so we know the scene, right? The king wakes up, overcome by the desire for love making, wondered where all his queens were. And then, trying to find them, he sees that they had entered the presence of this, ascetic. So, of course, he's overcome with jealousy. Ha! Who is this charlatan of an ascetic who injures my royal splendor by laying eyes on my palace women, setting his snare like a bird catcher? When they heard this, the eunuchs were filled with alarm and panic and addressed the king, saying, "Please do not say this, your majesty, please. This is a sage who has purified himself through an accumulation of long practiced vows, disciplines, and austerities. He is called Kshantivadin." But the king's mind was confounded. Taking no heed of the eunuch's words, he exclaimed, "My word, how long should the world be fooled by the crooked deceit of this fellow, styling himself as an ascetic and not a ladies' man? Well, I'll expose the cheating nature he hides under his ascetic costume, full of deceitful guile." With these words, he took the sword from his hand, from the hand of his female attendant, and advanced on the ascetic like a foe, intent on slaying him. The queens had been informed of the king's arrival by their attendants, and when they saw that the rage had dispelled all gentleness from the king, they felt distraught, and their eyes rolled with panic and alarm. Standing up and paying their respects to the eminent seer, they approached the king and raised folded hands to their heads, so that their faces peered through like lotus buds emerging from their sheaths in autumn. by their graceful, modest, and charming behavior. But their graceful, modest, and charming behavior could not pacify the king's mind as it burned with anger's fire. Fury had made the king's conduct become violent, and when they saw him charging forward, weapon in hand, glaring at the eminent seer with a rigid stare, the queens took the opportunity to entreat him and block his way, saying, "Divine king, please stop. Please do not be rash. This is illustrious Kshanti Vadin." In his wickedness, however, the king assumed that the ascetic had won over the queen's hearts, making him even more angry. His furrowed brow and his fierce and jealous sidelong glances made disapproval of their audacious requests all too apparent. Casting his eyes at the attendants in charge of the women, he shook his head, making the tips of his crown and earrings tremble. He then turned his glare onto the women, addressing them with the following words: "He speaks only of forbearance, but he does not practice it, for he could not forbear the desire to have contact with women. His words are one thing, his actions another. His pernicious mind is again something else. Who is this dissolute man sat in the ascetic forest, brazenly banging away about his deceitful vows?" The women were filled with despondency when the king struck down their entreaties, his heart hardened by fury and violence, for they're well acquainted with kings' ferocious and implacable nature. Grieving for the eminent ascetic, they lowered their heads with shame and withdrew from the area, obeying the hand signals made by the attendants in charge of the women, who were also distraught with fear and despair. So I'm looking now, and we're a little bit out of time. So let me see how many. So yeah, we're out of time, and it's not. There's still a couple more pages of this story. So why don't we leave it for now? It's okay, right? We're at a good part. Right before, so the kind of cliffhanger, and what will be in next week's episode will be what the king then did. Okay. So let's stop for now.
We can't hear you.
May whatever virtue I have ever collected benefit the teachings and all transmigratory beings, and in particular may it cause the essence of perfect pure Losang Drakpa's teachings to shine forever. So we also dedicate for the long lives of the spiritual friends, particularly His Holiness Dalai Lama, and for the quick return of all our gurus who have recently passed away, particularly Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and also that the mind of bodhicitta arise in the hearts of all sentient beings, particularly all the sentient beings in this world. And then through that, may all the wars in the world, particularly the war in Ukraine, the war now in Israel and the Gaza be pacified and instantly stop without any further bloodshed, loss of life, or destruction, and also the other proximate causes of sentient beings to suffer, including all environmental degradation, all disease, famine, economic problems, natural disasters, and so forth also be pacified. In that way, may all sentient beings quickly attain enlightenment. Okay, so thank you very much. I will see you next week, and we'll continue with this story and yeah, another one. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Sure, thank you.